Welcome to the Leadership Zone. I'm your host, Sheila Walsh, Leadership Development Specialist, Coach and Researcher. In this episode, we're going to discuss being a trusted leader. So one of the things that comes up in all the leadership development or coaching that I do at some level is trust. Who do we trust? Who trusts us? How do we become trusted? And the thing is that trust is built in multiple different ways for multiple different people. And so trust isn't a catch-all, one-off, easy to do thing. Mostly, and I'll go straight to the punchline first, mostly what we need to think about is being consistent with what we say we'll do and with how we behave. To be trusted, people need a sense that we are consciously making decisions, and those decisions will align with what we tell them, what we say we'll do, what we actually value. One of the issues with trust is that often people seek trust to degrees that aren't relevant to what they're doing. So, for instance, if you need to trust somebody give you a report, that is very different to needing to trust somebody with confidential information. And that is very different to needing to trust somebody to be able to do their job well. And so one of the things when you're trying to be engaged as an entrusted leader that you need to consider is what kind of trust you need from people and why. What's the purpose of the trust? But also, what kind of trust do you need in order to do your role? And this is where often people mix up being liked, being respected with being trusted. People need to trust that you will do what it is you are meant to do. That doesn't mean they need to trust you in multiple other areas. Now, don't get me wrong, workforces are really challenging and interesting places. And people have all sorts of expectations on leaders. We do this massive projection onto leaders all the time. We often want them to be things that have nothing to do with their role. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody believes that a good leader looks different. And those projections do impact you as a leader. But when we're thinking about trust and leadership, we need to get down to the nuts and bolts of it. We need to talk about the actual components that result in trust. We need to think about what type of trust you need, as well as what kind of trust isn't that important. I don't need trust that I'm a nice person, but I need trust that I will follow through in the things that I say, for instance. So one of the things I'd recommend any leader doing in this moment, if you're thinking that being trusted is something you're being challenged with at the moment, is to think about what the people from you, and remember, different stakeholders need to trust different things. The shareholders need to trust something completely different to the floor staff, for instance, because depending on where you are in the organization, you as a leader have a different role and responsibility to different people. And so it is worth starting by doing a little stakeholder map. Do out a piece where you consider who you need the trust of, but also what kind of trust. Trust isn't one big thing. It's a big word, but it means multiple things to multiple people. Now, there's also something to consider, which is some people trust until it's broken, and others believe you have to earn trust. And they're just different ways of looking at the world and different beliefs about trust. It's likely that the people you need to trust you come from both of those perspectives. Different people will have a different starting point. And so when you think about who needs to trust you and how they need to trust you, it is still worth thinking about what builds trust, such as consistency, transparency, demonstration of values and integrity. People can do business with you and be led by you and work with you without trusting you. But to be influential, to be able to support people in moving forward in a direction that you are attempting to lead in, that requires trust. That's less transactional. That requires a level of emotional investment from people. And it is worth thinking about what type of signals and what types of behaviors or building blocks to trust do people need in the area that you need to be trusted. And it is worth in building that into how you approach your leadership, how you build your leadership signature or brand, but also in how you communicate. You see, trust isn't really just about whether you can do the job. Trust is also about, do I believe that the way you're going to lead or influence is something I feel aligned with? And also, quite ultimately, people are quite self-absorbed, generally, we all are. And people aren't thinking about a lot of the bigger things, even those that think they are. Often people are thinking about, how does this affect me? And so when you think about building trust, you could have a really great idea, but the person it impacts it might not be the impact they're willing to engage with. So it is worth thinking about trust from the point of view of what are individuals expecting of me, and also what's reasonable for me to achieve. One of the ways to balance these projections and expectations from others is to actually consider, what is it I'm willing to give and offer to be trusting, to build that trust between us? What are the components or the activities or the engagements I can do? But also clarifying the boundaries around that. So sometimes leaders are afraid to say, I know I've disappointed some, but it is my duty to do X, Y, and Z. And maybe if you're a politician, that's probably not ideal. But within a private organization or even a public organization or a not-for-profit, it is important that even if you do things people disagree with, that you're building trust around them. And how you do that is by stating your why. Why is ultimately the thing that leads people when there isn't a fact or there isn't evidence in the moment. But it's also the thing that people lean on when you make a decision that they disagree with. People can get behind when they understand how and why you made that decision. Whereas often when we're in leadership positions, we avoid that difficult conversation because it's not nice to feel like people are judging us or rejecting us. But really, if we're trying to build trust, what we need to focus on is sharing our why and ensuring that there is a consistency between our behavior and what we're communicating. Ensuring that we are demonstrating that we can be trusted in the area we need to be trusted in, not necessarily that we are a deeply trustworthy person in every setting, because that's a little bit distracting. To be an entrusted leader, people need to value why and how you do things and have to have a sense that how you make decisions lines up, that you're not just being moved by your personal agenda or by a desire to achieve something at all costs. And so it is important that you're communicating your why behind your leadership decisions, especially in moments where people might not agree with them. And this allows you to build that leadership brand or signature, but more importantly, it allows people to trust you. They don't have to agree with you to trust you. Think about the people you trust that you don't agree with their opinions, but you trust in how they make decisions. You know that there's a consistency. You can make sense mentally and emotionally of the decision they made, even if it isn't your preference. And so trust is not the same for all people. It is not built the same, and that it isn't the same starting point. And people constantly project onto other people, especially in positions of power. And so you're going to have all of this occurring when you're also trying to build your leadership brand, signature, and utilizing trust. So just remember that trust is built in people understanding how you make decisions. It's not always built in you making the decision that they wanted. And often trust is broken because people believe you are going to make a different decision and you didn't manage expectations. So for trust building, it's highly about relating rather than transactions. And it's also about following through on what you say you're going to do, but also on demonstrating the values that you're utilizing in decision-making in multiple settings and not just in that decision. Because what that can do is it can show people that you're more of a fair-weathered decision maker, and that doesn't inspire trust long-term. And so think about trust as an ongoing relationship between you and many, as well as you and one, but also consider what they need to trust you with so that you can think about how to demonstrate the line between why you do things and the things you do so that you can build trust, even if you can't build agreement. So they would be my tips if you're trying to improve the trust people have in you in your leadership. I would say over-communicate, communicate clearly, and make sure that the why is clear in your communications. That's often what we skip when we think people don't like the what. We forget that the why matters in those moments. I hope this was helpful. There'll be links below that you can sign up for my weekly newsletters, or you can go on and watch other videos or other pieces of work related to trust. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Zone. We can continue this conversation over on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is @SheilaWalsh1, or at LinkedIn, you'll find me under Sheila Walsh. To book a free consultation to discuss your leadership needs or the leadership development needs of your organisation, simply visit my website www.sheilawalsh.com and book a free leadership consultation. I look forward to hearing from you.